assistant SID at Azusa Pacific. He's live in Azusa, California. And, Joe, you're back in the studio in the
Absolutely.
Santan Valley where it's been frosty.
Having lots of fun with our new phone system today. I apologize for that.
That's okay. We have some extra time to go on. It's the beauty of internet radio. So, Chris, we appreciate you being patient and joining us. For those of you that did see the story this morning, Chris Baker had an opportunity in October to take some time and head to Africa and climb Mount Kilimanjaro. And Chris, it's back last spring. We actually had an athlete from Academy of Art, it was a tennis player, that did the same thing. So, talk about how this all came about for you to have this opportunity.
Well, thanks for having me on today. It must be a slow news day if you're reaching the bottom of the barrel for me, but definitely glad to join you. I was just kind of lucky. My wife's uncle was planning like a bucket list trip, and he knew I love climbing mountains, and he kind of invited me, and that's pretty much how it all started.
Talk about how, you just don't go climb mountains. You just don't go to Africa and say, hey, I'm going to go climb this mountain. What kind of preparation, both physically and also sort of, just the travel preparations to go do something like this? Did you have to get special visas? Did you have to get passes? How does all that work?
Yeah, I had to get a travel visa. I had to do go to the doctor, get a lot of shots, take a lot of malaria pills. A lot of preparation went into it. But the biggest preparation was just leaving Azusa Pacific for 2.5 weeks in October with football, soccer, cross country all going on at the same time. So I was really blessed that our head SID, Joe Ryan, allowed me to do it, and Gary Pine, the athletic director. They really supported me in the decision to go and really go on a once-in-a-lifetime trip. So a lot of preparation for me just to get everything ready while I was gone, and I was very happy to go, and it was an amazing trip. It was physically, it was demanding going up and training for it. They recommend doing a lot of wind sprints, doing a lot of climbing and hiking. And for me, unfortunately, I hurt my ankle about 2 months beforehand playing basketball, so my training was a little bit limited, but I made it to the top, and glad I did.
When did it actually all start? I mean, is it something that you knew 6 months out that you were planning to do, a year out that you were planning to do? How far in advance do you need to plan something like this?
I think I knew about 10 months in advance, and you probably need about that much time to prepare. You have to get shots about 6 months out to make sure you come back alive. So I prepared roughly 10 months in advance. I let Joe know it was a possibility. He wasn't excited, obviously, at first, but he definitely helped me in the end. He's glad when I came back, for sure. It was a rarity. He was happy to see me, so it was a good thing. But I knew going into it, a lot of preparation just with the doctor, talking to the doctor about how to train physically for it, taking altitude pills, and just reading a lot of books on altitude sickness. I've done a lot of climbing in the past, but nothing over 19,000 feet, so it was definitely a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I'm not sure I'll do anything like that again, but very glad I went, and it was just amazing time in Africa.
Well, talk about the actual travel. You're living in Southern California. How do you actually get there?
I got to LAX pretty early in the morning. You fly into Amsterdam, then fly from Amsterdam directly into Tanzania, which is where Mount Kilimanjaro is. Unfortunately, my flight was delayed in LA, got to Amsterdam, only had an hour layover, so I missed my connecting flight. I ended up spending the rest of the day just in the city of Amsterdam, took a flight into Kenya, and then flew into Tanzania. Got there about a day later than I was supposed to, but it all worked out. It's a very long flight, about 12 hours for each flight, just from here to from LA to Amsterdam, then another 12 hours from Amsterdam down to Tanzania.
Wow. So you end up going east and then south, basically.
Yeah. Seems like a strange route. I don't know why LA doesn't have direct flights just to Tanzania. It seems like a very popular place. The airport was one of the smallest airports I've ever been in. I think there was one runway, one terminal. It was definitely a different experience than I'm used to. But it's kind of unique to see when we're about to land. There's Mount Kilimanjaro in the background, and there's nothing around it. It's just wildlife, and you're kind of landing, seems like in the middle of nowhere. Definitely an adventure. Didn't know what I was getting myself into. Kind of scary. You could see the towns have natural fencing to keep out the lions. So that's kind of scary when you're flying somewhere and you see these thorn bushes to keep the lions out. So that was interesting.
So when you get there, obviously you went. Did you go with a group of people, or just you and your wife's uncle?
My wife's uncle and his good friend from Hawaii both went. They were the ones that kind of spearheaded the trip. They booked the guide. They booked all the rooms, and they took me along. They had the silly notion that if anything happened to them, I'd be able to carry them down. But like I must have convinced them somehow that I was strong enough to do that, or experienced enough. So they invited me on their trip, their middle-age crisis trip, and I was very happy to join them. It was a great time. They were a lot of fun to be around. It's amazing. They're not in great shape, and it's kind of a testament to what hiking is. It's just it's a mental challenge. You would see them, you'd never expect them to be people that would be able to climb Mount Kilimanjaro, but they just mentally were prepared for it. Pace themselves, drink about 2 gallons of water a day, and it's more mental than it is physical, and that's what I keep telling people when they ask me about it. Yeah, it's physically demanding, but mentally you just have to be prepared for a lot of pain.
When people think of climbing mountains, you think of a lot of them that you're kind of rappelling up walls. For Kilimanjaro, it's basically a long hike, isn't that what it is?
Essentially, yeah. The final day is very steep, but yeah, there's never any technical climbing involved. You never strap on crampons. You don't have an ice pack. You just have trekking poles and a backpack, and it's a very long hike. But yeah, anyone with no hiking experience or climbing experience could theoretically do it. Yeah, it's not no rappelling, no cliffs.
What would you say?
Usually, oh, go ahead.
What would you say the coolest thing that you saw along that trip was? Whether it be some kind of animal, or what was the coolest experience you had on that trip?
Outside of reaching the summit, which was just a huge accomplishment, I think the coolest thing, we were on a safari after we got down. We got the privilege of seeing a pride of lions eating a wildebeest. It sounds pretty bad, but it was definitely a unique experience to see nature in that way and to see this on a safari. And it's kind of weird. It's like being behind the curtain of Oz when you're out there, because you see so much about Africa and what Africa is, and then you go on a safari, and there are lions literally within 20 feet of a herd of wildebeest, within 20 feet of elephants, within 20 feet of giraffes. They all hang out in the same area, so that was something I wasn't expecting. But that was the coolest thing I saw, was just the lions eating an unfortunate wildebeest.
You had sent us some photos of some of the pictures that you took on the trip, and the one was a really pretty up close shot of a large elephant. How did you manage that shot?
We were just on a safari in Tarangire National Park in Tanzania. We were just driving along, and then out of nowhere, out of the trees comes about 6 or 7 elephants, and they literally get within 10 feet of the cars, and you're just sitting there taking as many photos as you can. And it's kind of sad to say, but you kind of just get used to it after a while. The first time we drove into the park, we saw, I think it was an antelope type of creature, but we don't know what it was. We thought it was the coolest thing. We took about 100 photos, and by the end of the day, we're driving by giraffes, elephants. You don't even notice them anymore. They're just kind of part of the landscape.
It's not like going to a zoo or the Animal Kingdom in Disney World. It's like, no, it must be a little different experience. Yeah, a whole experience of being in their natural environment. What was food like for you? I mean, obviously, taking the trek and walking on that hike, do you have to pack your own food, and what kind of food do you have to carry?
Well, I did pack a little granola bars and things like that, but the guide service, you can't climb Kilimanjaro without a guide service. So the guide service took care of most of the food, and the food, it's nothing great. You're eating vegetables pretty much the entire time, boiled corn, carrots, peas. After a while, you just kind of dream of pizza and a hamburger. it's not the best food, but it's nice to not have to worry. You have a hot meal every morning, every night. So it was a unique experience where you go for 10 days at a time without eating anything that you really enjoy eating. Kind of a different take on food.
See, when you looked at Kilimanjaro, and I think a lot of people that don't really understand it, and you kind of touched on it a little bit. When you are at Kilimanjaro, it really rises up off the plains, like out in the middle of nowhere. It's not part of like a huge mountain range. Isn't that correct?
No. Yeah, it's the largest freestanding mountain, which means it's not part of a range. It's actually three volcanic. It's a large volcano, essentially, and it just kind of rises up out of the plains. And the most unique thing about the mountain, I'd say, is during the hike, you start out in a really dense forest where every night you just hear monkeys and other animals all night howling. Then after a few days, you're in this desert, kind of savanna area where you see water buffalo kind of grazing. And then after a while, you're kind of in this lunar-type landscape where there's just rocks. It's just nothing but rocks, and at the very top is just the glacier and the peak. So it's a really strange mountain in the sense that you experience 4 different habitats within a week span. But yeah, it just rises up out of nowhere. And on the flight, it's definitely, every time they fly over it, they tell everyone's taking photos of it. And it's kind of hard to imagine that in just like about a week span, you're going to be on top of that. It just kind of rises out of Tanzania.
Did you hit any blizzard conditions or anything like that?
What's that?
Did you hit any blizzard conditions or anything like that?
No blizzard conditions. The first 2 nights, heavy rain, but it's so the elevation is so high. There's not much moisture up there. You're above the clouds for a good portion of the hike, it's deceivingly cold. Any photo they show people, it looks like it's in the desert or it's a very desolate area. But at the peak, it was below 0 degrees. For most of the time, it's below freezing. For most of the time, it's a week of being uncomfortable. And I think that was probably the biggest challenge is you never get warm. Even you're sleeping in a nice sleeping bag, but when you get up in the morning, freezing outside. There's frost covering the tent, the ground frozen. Now it's probably the biggest challenge is just dealing with not being warm for about a week period.
How long is the actual hike? I mean, obviously you're sort of meandering up the mountain. How distance-wise from the start to the top? What's the distance that you covered?
You know, I've tried to look that up. We took there's about 6 different main routes that guides use to get up to Kilimanjaro. We combined 2 different routes. We started in the jungle. I want to say it was about 70 miles that we went, but there and back, but I'm not positive. Been trying to figure that one out for a while. But it took 6.5 days to get up and a day and a half to get down. That was about the timeline.
Yeah. At what point, was there any ever point when you first got there or when you started the trip, you ever say to yourself, what did I get myself into?
That was daily. I think I said that. There's a sign right when you go in the gate. It says, do not enter if you have a cold, a sore throat, a cough, or anything like that, because that's usually how people die. Because if you're sick, you're not likely going to get healthy at that altitude. Your body can't adapt and adjust. And I went in with a slight cold, and I was coughing, and I was fortunate enough to get better by day 3, but at that altitude, you kind of have strange thoughts. Your mind's not thinking clearly. And I had a diary I kept, or a journal, I guess. A man says journal, but I'm kind of different. I had a diary that I kept, and in that diary, I looked back on it, and multiple times I'm reading, and it's kind of a death. My last words is kind of what I was writing, like the snows of Kilimanjaro kind of words of what I would want to do in the future, and it's just kind of, it's an interesting thing to do. You're dealing with, I thought I was facing death for a lot of the time. Obviously I wasn't. I was safe the entire time, but very interesting thoughts that came out, and reading back is definitely hard to understand where I was coming from with that.
Was there a point when you got, and maybe this occurred at the summit, where you got there and said, wow, I'm so glad I did this?
Yes, at the summit, for about 5 minutes I said that, and then The final night, it's an interesting thing. You wake up at 11 p.m. after hiking for a full day, and then you start your summit ascent at midnight. And you're hiking all the way till 7 a.m. is probably, I think, when you reach the summit. And it's just nothing but pure pain. I was nauseous. I had a pounding headache. I was getting altitude sickness, but I know if the guide or porter saw me in that condition, they turn you around. They don't get tipped much if you die. So they want to make sure I'm safe. So that I was dealing with that, and at the very top, I was still nauseous, had a major headache, but I was just looked around, and there's nothing higher than you, and you just kind of know how much you went through to get to that point. So that was a very rewarding experience, and after that 5-minute period, I just couldn't wait to get down and go drink some coffee.
When the one picture that you sent us had a group shot, and you could see the clouds are fairly far below you at that point.
Yeah.
I mean, other than being in an airplane, it's probably a surreal experience to be walking around and have clouds below you.
Yeah, after I think day 4, there was never a cloud above us. They were always below us, and that was interesting. Our hike took us around the mountain. We didn't go straight and then up it. We went around it. So for about one day we're looking over Tanzania, the next day we're looking over Kenya, and it's just, if you're lucky enough for the clouds to dissipate, you could see the cities below, and it was just kind of strange to know that you're at this elevation and you're looking down on the clouds. That's something, yeah, like you said, only in an airplane you get to see that kind of view.
What about bugs? Were there a lot of bugs?
There were a lot of bugs in the jungle area for the first day and a half, 2 days, but after that there was nothing really wanted to live up there.
What was the biggest danger that you had to worry about? I mean, you got your shot and vaccinations, obviously, to prevent this disease. You keep a lot, wary of lions in the villages, but on the actual trek from the starting point up, what was the biggest thing that you had to be concerned about?
Altitude sickness is what I think kills most people up there. You don't drink enough water, you go too fast, you overexert yourself. It can happen fast, and once it happens, you have to get down quickly. And if you don't, that's how most people die. Like on Everest, that's how most people would be in danger, is just getting altitude sickness. So you take altitude sickness pills, but if you don't properly acclimatize and drink enough water, and you're drinking more water than you can almost handle, it's unbearable how much water you drink. But if you don't, you'll get sick, and you get sick pretty quickly.
The guides and the tents that you sleep, do you sleep in bags outside, or they put up portable tents if you're inside? How does that work?
Yeah, they pack portable tents, and these guys are some of the most impressive people I've ever seen. They probably have zero body fat on them. It's incredible. They carry about 50 pounds, probably more than that, and they carry it on top of their heads. They don't carry backpacks. They put it on top of their heads as they're walking up the mountain, and they're walking about twice as fast as we are. So it's kind of embarrassing. And then they have the camp set up, and they're ready to go. But yeah, they set up a tent in a mess tent every day, and they clean it up for us. So we were kind of spoiled on the trip. But I think without that, it would have been pretty difficult to pack our own food and pack our own tent. I don't think we would have made it.
Did anything, when you came back after this experience, sometimes people take these journeys and they come back and it's a life-changing experience. Is there anything that in your life that you saw or thought about that after you came back that you viewed differently, think differently, or was it just a one-time experience you enjoyed?
Well, I don't know how much it changed me, other than I know for the final 4 hours of that final hike, I think I said, and I've never said this phrase probably in my life or since then, this soon shall pass. I kept saying that because I was in so much pain. And it was one of those things where I probably said it once every 5 minutes, because I knew after I'd done a day or two, I'd be down on a safari in Africa just enjoying life. At that point, you're not really enjoying anything. So I think I learned from that, knowing that short-term pain, it's only temporary, and I think that's what I took from it. I'm not sure how much. It did make me change my life. I had the goals of climbing Everest in the future. That's not ever going to happen after this trip. No interest in that. That was probably the biggest change.
Are you glad you did the safari after the climb?
Yes. You kind of go around with a puffed up chest down there after you climb Kilimanjaro. You kind of. So I'm glad we did it afterwards, because beforehand you're eating so much. We stayed at coffee plantations for about 4 straight nights with world class dining and great food, and we're pretty much in a car or laying on a couch or in bed for 20 of those 24 hours each day. So you're not really doing much physically. So I'm pretty sure if I went and did the safari beforehand, I would have struggled pretty bad on the hike. I would have been fairly out of shape.
It just sounds like a really fascinating experience, and it's what when you came home, what did your wife say to you? Were you able to correspond with her at all while you were climbing up the mountain? I mean, with cell phones in Texas?
No. For the first, no, I didn't. The entire mountain experience here, there's no cell service, there's nothing. I mean, as you can imagine. So I was a little sick with worry about what might be happening with her, but she actually met me in Africa when I got down. And so she was with me, and the first thing she noticed was how bad I smelled. And the second thing she said was, I need to shave. So those are the first 2 things she said to me. And after that, she thought it was an amazing. She's gone backpacking and hiking with me before, but she just had no interest in doing Kilimanjaro. So she was very happy to see me come back safely. She was worried about me, but yeah, she was very happy to see me as well after I took my shower.
Did the group, the 3 of you, did you guys lose weight by the time compared from where when you started with all the walking and?
Yeah, I think I lost. Yeah, I think I lost a good amount of fat on me, but I gained some. You gain some muscle, so it's kind of a wash. But you don't lose much weight, but the weight you lose is the good weight, and you gain the muscle. So yeah, I think one of the guys probably ended up losing 15, 20 pounds. But he could afford to lose. He was a big guy.
It must have been just. I can't imagine just when you're flying and you're landing. It's for most people, it's surreal just to go to Africa.
Yeah, and then for you to get out there.
Yeah, and then to take a look at climbing that mountain, it must have just been a surreal experience when you got off the plane.
It was incredible. Unfortunately, when you're on the ground, there's so much cloud coverage. It's along the equator, so there's not many great views of it from the bottom. But when you're on the plane and just knowing that that's a mountain you're going to be on top of if all things go well, it's kind of hard to put into words and understand how much of an accomplishment it is, because it's one of those things where I grew up playing sports, and I grew up with, where my definition of winning was beating an opponent. There's no opponent on the mountain. You're just, it's an individual test, and with that, it's a unique experience to just climb a mountain and to get the self-satisfaction of getting there at your own pace. And I know the first time I ever climbed a mountain, I threw up for about an hour straight, got altitude sickness, because I was trying to be fast, trying to be the strongest in the group. And I realized that's not really what this is about. It's about something more, and about accomplishing something for yourself, and not really to beat anyone or be faster or be the best. It's a unique thing to do, and not many people get the chance to do something like that.
Well, we appreciate you coming on board, coming on the PacWest Radio, talking about it. It's just an outstanding accomplishment, and you deserve kudos for doing it. And I don't know if anybody at Azusa Pacific would like to go back with you or not, but I'm sure Joe or Gary Pine might not be interested in taking that climb with you. But it's just one question I do want to ask you: did you get anything for actually accomplishing it? Did they give you anything? A badge, a T-shirt, a token, anything?
You get a certificate, which is like an official Tanzanian government certificate that says that you reached the summit of Uhuru Peak, which is the highest peak on the mountain. You get that, but you have to pay for the T-shirt. Even though the guides you pay a ton of money, and they don't really give you any. They actually ask. The funny thing is, they ask for some gear when you leave, because they don't have much in terms of boots or clothing. So the guide service asked if we could donate any of the stuff that we want. So it's kind of funny because we don't really get anything. We ended up giving them gloves and shirts and socks and shoes when we're finished. So yeah, we didn't get anything.
Well,
went and bought her a $20 tourist T-shirt.
Well, you have the admiration of a lot in the PacWest who you recognize the accomplishments. So, Chris, thanks. I appreciate you joining us on PacWest Radio, and just really fascinating. And I know Joe will put this up on YouTube later for those who don't want to.
Absolutely, for sure.
And I know he has, Joe, I know you have the photos. You can put them up on your website, too.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So, well, Chris, we appreciate it. Thank you again for joining us, and congratulations on a terrific accomplishment.
Well, thanks for having me. Thanks for having me, Tom.
Chris Baker, the Assistant Sports Information Director at Azusa Pacific, and his climb of Mount Kilimanjaro. And, Joe, I'll be back in studio next week with the soccer players from Grand Canyon University will be in studio, and it'll be a terrific live in-studio interview with one of our student athletes in the PacWest.
Fantastic.
So
sounds great, Tom.
So for Joe Carrera, I'm Tom Camillo. We'll catch you next week on PacWest Radio.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.